Hello, my name is Michael Ruggeber. I've been a priest and a therapist for more than 50 years. I have a doctorate in biblical theology, and I'm a licensed therapist with the state of Indiana. I thought I would briefly, for a while today, visit with you and give you my impressions of what I see happening in America. First of all, I think of George Floyd. He died a little over a month ago, begging for breath with a man's knee on his neck. That night, there was a demonstration in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and very soon other cities followed. And although there was some violence noted as the demonstrations began, by and large, I believe that the demonstrators were nonviolent and wanted to clearly present a message to you and I. I believe it's a message that many Americans have understood and support. I believe their basic message is this. It's the phrase from what I call the American Creed, the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal and have certain inalienable rights given by their Creator. They might translate that phrase in a different way, a different manner. They talk about justice and peace. They carry signs and they wear T-shirts saying, "I can't breathe." But that's their message. And what struck me is the force that is being heard. Perhaps it's the number, the endurance, the interracial composition of the demonstrators, many things. We've had demonstrations through most of my life that I remember. Some have been very profound and have left their mark on me and I think on our society. And this, I pray, is one of those times. I feel that even politicians, those on a municipal level, a state level, or a federal level, are beginning to react to the message, not simply in that way we see in the past quite often, "My thoughts and prayers go with you," but more important than that. Not that those words aren't important, but I think they've been overused in the recent past. But more important now, it's in the doing. I think there's a struggle to translate what the crowds are asking for into specific laws, into some way of looking at our structure, not just in the police department, but many other structures, and seeing where we might still be flawed. And after 2 centuries and more, we haven't totally lived up to that American creedal statement. And you take this struggle going on and you superimpose it upon the other vast struggle, the coronavirus. It's only been 4 or 5 months. But in that time, our entire country has changed. It's affected every one of us. I don't care who we are or where we are. It's hard to understand a figure of 125,000 deaths, and how each day when we hear the news, we are posted a number, 1,000, 2,000, 2,500. On a good day, maybe only 700. But they come across to me, and maybe others I don't know, almost like a football score or a baseball score at the end of the game. It doesn't have the impact that the reality it says that today 1,000, 2,000 people died and left behind broken and scarred families, families in tremendous pain. That's what's happened to us. And you add to that the quarantine we've all been going through. I still am at my age. I guess I'm cautious, but my wife and I, we protect each other. But for that length of time that most of us were in quarantine, we were surrounded by death. And I think that most of us could not help but think of our own deaths, could not help but think of our lives, that they might be snuffed out. What values do we have? What values have we actually done? What are our lives, what kind of meaning do we have? How do we give meaning to ourselves and to others? Perhaps that might be the fertile ground that help people listen to those demonstrators. But you couple this meditation on self, and you add to it the suffering of the actual illness of the virus, and as well as the loss of employment, economic crises that most of us, or some of us, I don't understand, where there's actually fear of where the next meal will come. How can we save the house? Do we have to move? These are real fears people are feeling right now. Do I go back to work and risk the virus, or do I stay home? All this is taking place now. America is in crisis, in deep crisis. And you might say in some ways, it's a crisis due to breathing, lack of, or corruption of. And I thought of the story of Jesus, and I thought of the Gospel of John that describes the last breath of Jesus as he's on the cross going through pain, tremendous pain, the physical pain, the emotional pain. A man who went forth to his people to help them, to heal them, to love them, and they cried out for his blood. At least those in Jerusalem. And here he is. And John says the soldiers had a sponge and they dipped it in some of their crude soldiers' wine and raised it to his lips. I think it was an act of charity. I think they felt that he had done enough. And then Jesus bows his head and says, "It is finished." And John notes, he gave up his spirit. The verb to give up can also mean, in the Greek, to give forth. And I believe that's the correct reading of this whole thing. John is saying Jesus gave forth his spirit, pneuma. But what does spirit mean? John was a Jew and casted the gospel in a Jewish background. And for a Hebrew or Jew of his time, the word for breath and the word for spirit is the same word, ruach. And it's my belief that when Jesus bowed and gave forth his Spirit, he gave forth his breath and his Spirit to you and I. And I feel there's a confirmation of this. On the first day of the week, when Jesus appears to his disciples in the upper room, and they're startled, the doors were locked, and yet this man comes in, and then he shows them his hands and his side, and they recognize Jesus. And John adds, and their joy was unbounded. And he wished them peace. And then he commissioned them that as he was sent by the Father, now he sends them out on a mission, the same mission he had. And he does something rather unusual at this point. He breathes on them and says, receive the Spirit, and gives them authority over this fledgling community of Christians that is being formed. Now, John was certainly aware of the the Jewish Hebrew scriptures and the Torah, and when in the opening words of Genesis recall the formation of a lump of clay that God breathed life into, and Genesis says that it became the breath of life. And I believe that John has recorded here the second creation with Jesus and his breath, in creating man, in redeeming man, in giving man the power to truly love, in ennobling man, not just Christian man, but every man, be he Christian, atheist, Buddhist, Mohammed, whatever. Each man, I believe, is called upon with the breath of Jesus to do good and avoid evil. And that's what I believe I see in our country now. A movement shrouded in all sorts of problems, still founded on the foundation of all the strife we've had for the past 5 or 10 years, with the polarization, one side not talking to the other, one side saying the other is stupid, ignorant, dumb, whatever it might be, evil. That we are larger than that, and that there should be a healing taking place with us, a healing from the breath of Jesus. It's time. It's my prayer today with each one of you that the peace of the Lord be with you. Shalom.